Friends, family, fans, welcome back to another episode of Back Nine Bets, episode 157. I forgot the title, Spencer, because I didn't put it in the tab downstairs. But anyway, we are back for another episode this week. Show's brought to you by DraftKings. We thank them so much for their services and sponsoring this wonderful show. Go check them out. Use code FGD when signing up over there. I am joined this week by one of my best friends in the industry, one of my best friends in life, one of my past co-workers and current stud over at Rotoballer, Spencer Aguiar at Teal Sports on X. Spencer Aguiar, what's cooking, my brother?
Byron, it's always a pleasure to jump on air with you and discuss bets and do this. This is, there's a lot of reasons why I miss you at Rotoballer. I think the number one thing that I unfortunately miss is our Monday show that we used to do. People don't know this. We used to sit after the show was done, I don't know, for 3 hours and just talk about life and a little bit of golf would be discussed in it, but it was just kind of just a good time, just figuring out where we were at with everything. And that's the number one thing that I miss with you not being over at Rotoballer. So being able to jump on with you today and talk golf, it's always one of the highlights of my week when I can do that.
We're talking golf? I thought we were just going to do this, just chat live for an hour and a half in front of everybody.
I mean, that's probably what this will become before it's all said and done.
No, we're going to have a good time. We'll splurge everything in between how we need to. Give you all the bets. We've got tons. Spencer's got like 6 matchups for you. I got placements city for you. We've got both outrights. I got 2 first-round leaders. We're going to do maybe some DFS deep dives. I don't know. The amount of bets we've got, I'm not entirely sure we're going to be able to get through everything this week. So to get to DFS. So we're just going to chat and see where the world takes us, Spence.
That sounds great.
This week, we've got Riviera Country Club. We are done with the course rotations, baby. I'm so excited. As someone that makes these spreadsheets in Google Sheets, it's just so much more work to put these stupid course rotations into our databases and to make the models work and things. So we've got Riviera, one of the best courses when it comes to course history stickiness. Would you say it's in the second tier there, Spence, with all the top courses of course history outside of Augusta?
Yeah, I would think I think Data Golf has it as the 3rd most predictive course in rollover success rate. You kind of just see it when you look at the stats and you look at who's performed. And, it's funny, Byron, because I would have thought that if you look at last week, when you dive into Pebble Beach, there's a lot of predictive nature that goes into that course as well. I remember telling my girlfriend as I fired off like 15 matchups last week. Like this pales in comparison with the 7 matchups I'll talk about on this show. But books were funky last week. I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know if it was a Data Golf thing. I kind of tweeted about it a bit where I had such a different take to what Data Golf had in their projections. And it kind of felt like 6 years ago where it was this wild west of trying to grab every single matchup that I possibly could before it would move. And as you know, Byron, a lot of the matchups that I give move very quickly when I drop them over in Discord. So that's always its own fun game in and of itself, trying to get those matchups off to everybody before they shift very quickly. But I know you had a profitable week last week. I had a profitable week last week. I don't necessarily see that. Well, I won almost 11 units. That's one of the better weeks. It's one of the better weeks I've had in quite some time. Like we had talked about it last year. This is nothing but positive on this show, but I know we both got off to a slow start last year. I remember us talking, being like, what is going on in this market right now? And I got hot for a given time, and then I got cold again at the end of the year. And it's been a hot start to the year, and I'm very thankful for that. And I feel like, my model is in a really good spot with the way I'm reading these boards. And like I was going to say, I don't necessarily see as much of an advantage this week on the slate. I mean, you could be confused by seeing 7 matchups and being like, well, how do you not have that big of an advantage? But it's a tight board. It's a 72-man field. There is this, we'll call it a fringe cut, where the top 50 and ties are going to get into the weekend. But, if you look at this 2 years ago, 18 players from that mix ended up getting cut. So it's not as if it's non-existent. There are players that are not going to make the weekend at the end of the day. So I do think that there's a little bit of miscut equity that goes into the mix. And then we'll talk about the plays of why I like some of them as we move across the show.
Let's go. How much do you bet to win in the outright market, Spencer? Usually, I know you kind of vary, but like your minimum return is.
I've dropped it quite a bit.
Okay.
You're substantially heavier than I am. It used to be to win 8 units. I'm more in the 5-unit range right now. I hit like 3 outrights last year, which ended up being a very negative year for me. Right in the range. If I hit 4, it's usually where the profitable total is from where I'm at with it. I'm seeing less of an advantage, unfortunately, in these outright markets. I think books have gotten a lot savvier in those spots, and you see numbers move extremely fast. There's a name this week that we are both on where can I mention it?
Let's right off the top rope. Let's go, baby. Squad ride.
I know we're both on Tommy Fleetwood this week, and you could have gotten Tommy Fleetwood if you really got on it early at 28-1. There's a 25-1 that sat there for a little bit of time. And now if you shop around in the market at some of the sharper books, he's 17, 18-1. You can still get 22s or 23s out there in the space. But, it's kind of that efficient market to where I've said this a million times, Byron, where it's difficult when Scottie's in a tournament, because you have this board where Scottie is never going to be priced exactly where he should be. He's always going to be a couple of points lower, but it becomes a little challenging across from that, because you get a lot of these names that, in my opinion, get priced as if Scottie wasn't in the tournament to begin with. And that's where this discussion of with Scottie or without Scottie markets becomes so difficult, because I don't even know if in a lot of these spots, if you're necessarily getting as great of a value as you think you are. But for Fleetwood here, like if we're talking specifically Fleetwood, I've made this argument for, I guess, what feels like since the Tour Championship, where no matter how I run my numbers, he looks to be the 1A or the 1B, whichever way that it ends up being, to Rory McIlroy. I don't see a massive difference between those two in the projections. And by the way, I think Rory makes a ton of sense this week also at this course. But when you compare the two numbers, I started with Tommy Fleetwood. I considered the Rory McIlroy route. I think there's a real route that you could go where you could put both of them on your card and kind of just make this like a 2-man aggressive card at the top. But anytime that Fleetwood keeps getting put in this 20-1 plus range, I'm going to keep betting him with this public perception that he does not win golf tournaments. I understand that we have one PGA Tour victory from him in a 30-man contest. It's also against some of the best players in the world, though.
Yeah. I was driving up my driveway thinking about our conversation once you send through your picks to me. And Scott, I don't think Tommy Fleetwood has won a PGA Tour event yet, but he does. And that's all that matters.
That's true.
We don't have to think anything, because he needs to have the confidence to believe that he can get across the line. And I think after last week's T4 at Pebble, nice little backdoor action, probably at a course that doesn't necessarily suit his game. No, I feel like Riv this week is a really great course for him, considering how wet it's going to be, Spence. While we're talking about Tommy, because one of the main reasons my card's going to look the way it does is I've got a lot of Euros on the card because it's going to be wet and cold. And I feel like, Texas is one thing. It doesn't necessarily get wet and cold down there. And unless you're like from the Northeast, like Keegan and things like that, the Euros have an advantage in these conditions, I think, because they're comfortable in them, they're used to them, and they know how to adapt and play in them. So if it's cold and miserable, Tommy's going to be rocking that Riviera Country Club swag, which is now awesome. Love the fact he doesn't have a clothing sponsor, just repping every single course's pro shop out there every week. And I think he's going to do great. He's just well-rounded. That's exactly what you're going to need this week. We don't know. How are you like leading into the weather this week, Spence? Like, is what I'm saying making sense to you?
Yeah, I put a portion in my model. You talked about it. It's going to be extremely cold. It's raining there right now. I'm in Vegas for people that don't know, and it was a flash flood for me. So I think this whole entire area right now is just going to be very wet, and it makes a lot of sense what you just talked about, Byron. Like, one of the things that I have 7 statistical categories that I looked at this weekend. Half of them are going to be the common factors that you're going to hear on every single show, whether that's the proximity from 150 plus yards, whether that's the around the green game that you need. There's probably an interesting discussion that we could have about driving and what distance ends up meaning in wet conditions and cold conditions with it. But that's kind of the other half of my statistical model, to where I looked and I dove really deep into similar comp courses that are going to feature that really cold condition, courses that are going to feature this ability to pull a driver out of the bag and do so in these wet spots, to where you're going to have to maneuver and traverse and scramble at a really high rate. And we have seen this historically over and over again from these European golfers. This is that generic, like almost link style of what you end up getting all these times over and over again, where there's creativity and there's shot making, and you're not going to hit every single green in regulation. And we can talk about what the Kikuyu grass actually does in wet conditions versus like this speedy POA green that you normally hit into. And I do think players will have the ability to stop their balls a little bit better, which is kind of one of my reasons why I think distance might be a little bit more of a prerequisite this week. But yeah, I mean, distance and weather and all of that at the end of the day are a lot of those factors that you at least need to be looking at. I do think it makes a difference. And you talked about it at the beginning. It's the third most predictive course on tour. Like, we have seen this over and over again.
Yeah. And the thing is, Tommy's like weird because he doesn't necessarily have that tons of distance, which is hilarious. I added distance as my 7th box, but the fact that he's like a great total driver of the golf ball anyway, all the other areas of his game get made up quite easily. He still checks 6 boxes. The only one he didn't check, I don't think, was distance for me. So I'm totally cool with that. Every other area of his game's rocking and rolling. We've got the 10th and the 20th here, the last 2 times they've played at Riv. Want to stress one more time for you guys that didn't listen to Fantasy Golf Degenerates. 2025 was played at Torrey Pines, people. I've been caught looking at data where I don't have this reminder in red over here to tell me that it was played there, and thinking that last year was at Riv. It's not. Different course, different stuff, but kind of a comp course in a weird way for this venue anyway, given the length of the tee needed and long to mid-iron play. So we'll see how Tommy Fleetwood does. I've also bet him Spence top 5 as well, because you know how I go with these. We struggle with the outright sometimes, but if you get close, I want to cash in. So I'm going to be bagging Tommy Fleetwood at plus 390 over here on DraftKings as well. I think he's actually, I think that's at a different place, you know, the one with the fans and the crowd and whatever. So Tommy Fleetwood doing his thing. He's one of these guys that simultaneously finishes inside the top 5 when he finishes inside the top 10 as well. When he's popping hard. Top 10 rates for me, 41%. Top 5 rates, 37%. This doesn't include Pebble. Doesn't matter because he finished T4 at Pebble, right? So like that just kind of goes to prove our point that he is popping up pretty hard. And as you can see, he's over the last 12 months, the only market apart from the win market on the Tour Championship is the top 5 market for Tommy Fleetwood, where he's returned you cash. He's actually been a little inconsistent actually in the top 20 market, given his price. So I like just spending the upside money on him there in the top 5s, let the rest of the market kind of do its thing over there. You mentioned Rory McIlroy, Spence. I'm going to dive into my guy as well. We're rolling with Rory at 1475 over at DK. Pop that in the Model Maniac Patreon Discord. Yesterday, numbers have jumped to 12. There are 14s out there still. Again, good course history. I think he's got the same kind of situation as Tommy over here, where we are dealing with Rory having not necessarily the greatest history at this venue. And it's interesting to me because I took a look at the strokes gained for the 4 categories, and the ball striking has been fine. It's like every year he either loses 3.5 strokes chipping or 3.5 strokes putting. And to me, that's one of the easier things to fix, really. You know, so long as he's reminding us that he's always going to show up with the ball striking at a venue like this where you need tons of carry, you know, where you're going to be hitting those mid irons in. I'm loving Rory's profile at this golf course. I just hope he can avoid having a disaster on and around the greens this week. Thoughts?
That's kind of always the Rory problem. You talked about it earlier with Torrey Pines. I think there's a couple comp courses that I used. Augusta's the one that everybody's kind of running with right now. I did use Augusta. Quail Hollow was another one that I looked at. My concern with Rory specifically at Augusta was always his ability to make the right decisions in spots where he needs to not, and at this course, and it's the same thing in maybe not so much at the Masters, I guess, because you do have some of those like par 5 holes where there's some like massive risk rewards and there are water shots that you have to avoid with it. And I think this course as a whole, it's one of those venues to where there is no water in play. And you kind of see that with, I don't know if it's like modern technology now or because the course is so soft and players maybe that are just playing it nowadays have this approach of like grip it and rip it off the tee, and you're not going to necessarily hit the fairways to begin with here. So if you're further along, you have a shorter proximity range coming in, even if you're playing it out of sticky stuff. But like at the end of the day for Rory, these cold and wet conditions are always the best for him to actually have upside to win a golf tournament. That ability to be aggressive comes into play. He's further along on the course than everybody else. And then when he does have these irons coming in that sometimes can get wonky on him, like in 2026 right now, like I understand that this is what it is, but if you just look at scrambling from within 100 yards, Rory's the number one player in my model, and you're going to have to do a lot of scrambling when you miss the greens this week. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a great course fit for him. And it's one of the things that I even noticed last week. Like Pebble Beach is a tournament that he is the defending champion at coming into the event this year. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily think that was the best course fit for him. My model likes him because of some of that pitch and putt stuff that ends up coming into play, what we've seen with him recently on it. Mm. I think with Rory, and you look at the ball striking, I don't know what he entered Saturday, and I don't know if you have it in front of you. I don't right now. He was 20-somethingth on the leaderboard, 30-somethingth on the leaderboard. My model, one of the ways that I run it is I always do a reprojected leaderboard after every single round. And what I'm trying to find is when you take the actual ball striking metrics and you merge in the short game statistics from a baseline perspective. So what that means is I'm trying to find the players who are striking the ball the best and the ones that are either overachieving or underachieving with those very wonky stats that you're always going to get these ebbs and flows with. Rory should have been second on the leaderboard entering Sunday. We finally see all the pieces get put together. Mm-hmm. He skyrockets up the board. You get the finish that you end up getting with him to where out of nowhere, it looks like he's made a run at it. And unfortunately, it probably did hurt this Riviera number a little bit because a lot of the back end metrics were still showing that this was going to be like kind of the trajectory that he was going to be on. I think it's a great course fit for Rory. When it becomes a Rory week, it always worries me a little bit when I don't have the outright on him, because when Rory wins, he can win in runaway fashion with it. I think it's a good ticket. I think it's a good price. And like for me, just the initial thing, sorry, Byron, I'll let you talk in a second here.
No, but, that's the thing.
Yeah. All I was going to say is that when you compare him to like Fleetwood, for example, it's one of those things where there is a world where they both can be underpriced. And that's the crazy part about it. Like just because Fleetwood should be in the range of Rory doesn't mean that Rory's in the wrong range of where he's at.
Yeah. And really, when we were betting our Fleetwood ticket, he's not even in the same range, really. You know, he was 10 points different, which now it's a little different with him at 20 and stuff. But I just said on the show I did with Darbo, our Sunday night show on Back Nine Bets, my own YouTube channel, my personal one. The argument that Rory can outduel Scottie at his best when Scottie's at his best as well, I think is like the peak thing isn't a thing anymore. You know, like Scottie is unanimous the best. You know, like you take a look at these spike rounds, they are like steadily better than Rory by a decent clip. You know, Scottie's, you know, when I do round 1 and 2 and 3, 4 showdown, Spence, I have 75th percentile strokes gain total in there, which is, you know, like your 25th best round of the last 100. And Scottie Scheffler's 25th best round of the last 100 is gaining 5 strokes in one round. Like, that's insane. That is like so insane to think about. So it's something that I think needs to be capitalized on as well, because he does do his thing well. But when he's not playing great, he seems to be struggling, you know. And at this golf course, it's a really interesting situation because this is an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force, or an unstoppable object meeting an immovable force, or whatever you want to say. Because Scottie's recent form isn't worse than like a 7th for like the last 10 starts, but he hasn't finished better than 7th at Riviera. It was the same situation with Siwoo at the Waste Management, I think. he hadn't finished inside the top 12 at the Waste Management, but he hadn't finished outside the top 12 to begin the year, kind of thing. So what happens with Scottie Scheffler this week, Spence, at this golf course with this kind of course history?
I don't care as much about what he's done recently. I think Scottie's improving every single time that he gets out there. Like, there's a positive and a negative to this. I do think that there's a borderline, like it's almost insanity trying to bet against Scottie Scheffler in a golf tournament at this point, just because it's almost like a practice in futility of that. He wins at such a high rate that you're always running a risk of numbers getting blown up, even no matter how good of a price that you get, even in a world that you get a price on a Tommy Fleetwood that's, 8 to 12 points higher than what it should be, that Scottie kind of just goes nuclear and wins a golf tournament. The one thing I noticed with him in my profile, and whether this ends up being right or wrong, I guess we will see on this. I ran 7 statistical categories, and he's the number 1 player in 6 of them. That's kind of what you would expect on most Scottie Scheffler statistics. But the one category that he was not, one of the things I do, and I've talked with you, Byron, about it a lot, is I take a lot of the top 10 totals from the last 5 years at a tournament. So I call it the dispersion of scoring, like output that you would get from a player. So just to kind of try to simplify that, off the tee approach, around the green putting, there is a certain return that players that finish inside of the top 10 usually produce to get that result. So like for this tournament, I don't have it up in front of me right now. I don't have the notes here either, but it was like 13.5% roughly off the tee, 30-something% approach. You get a really big spike in around the green play at 17.5%. And then whatever the leftover changes would be your putting there. When I ran all of those numbers and I tried to look at what Scottie has done to start this year over a couple events, and that's, by the way, Byron, as you've talked about, a profile that is coming inside the top 10 every single week. It's a profile that has won a golf tournament. It's a profile that continues to get extremely hot on Sunday to work up these leaderboards. A lot of the 2026 metrics for this specific course kind of had concerns with him. And some of that comes down to the proximity numbers. Like he's almost much like worse to much worse in a lot of the areas. And I don't want to use a 3 or 4 tournament sample size to kind of have that be the end all be all for this. But, if you look at Scottie over a 2-year sample size, I'll just run through these very quickly. From proximity within 100 yards, he's 6th. You look at this year, he's 47th. 100 to 125 yards through 2 years, he's 2nd. This is relative to the field, by the way. He's 25th this year, 22nd from 125 to 150, 43rd this year. And then those ranges that we're really going to get a lot of shots from the 150 plus, 3rd from 150 to 175 for over 2 years, 31st this year, 11th from 175 to 200 for 2 years, 52nd this year. And then the proximity from 200 plus yards, he's been really bad kind of this season. 7th from proximity over 200 yards for a 2-year perspective, 60th out of 72 players entering this event. So like that's enough for me to be willing to take him on in the outright market. And it was enough for me, even if we look at DraftKings and DFS, to potentially be willing to maybe not fully take him on there, but I'm not going to be playing a ton of defense with Scottie. I think he's kind of tough to build with this week. And because there's a cut, it makes it a little bit more challenging also. But the proximity numbers worry me ever so slightly with him.
Spence, it's been a weird situation because it's been really do you think those proximity numbers have just been from the 1 or 2 rounds that the first 2 opening rounds he's had, at the Waste Management, like where he's shot level par? It's mainly got to do with the irons have been really bad. And the chipping, he's chipped a couple to his feet again. It's been a really absurd year with him. But again, we're talking about the best golfer in the world, and his numbers drifting to like the top 3rd of the field, barely, or to the bottom of the second third of it. But I, Spencer, am going to just pretend like the last 2 weeks haven't happened because I can't not go Scottie Scheffler first round leader on DraftKings at 11 to 1, basically, which to me is the only market that I'm really interested in taking him on my card right now. Because if you just take a look on the screen right now, round 1, he's gaining 3.6 strokes in round one. The last 2 Thursdays have been abysmal for him, and this includes one of them. I don't have the Pebble data because my computer's a piece of shit. So I did run the data anyway in other systems, and he's still eclipsing ridiculous numbers in round one, even with those 2 bad ones. And the odds are triple what they are for outright. And I understand that the beauty of Scottie is stacking now 3 rounds of golf together to still finish top 5. If he just stacks 4, he wins tournaments. Like that's just how it goes. So if he finishes well in round 1 this week, he's likely going to win. So why not take him onto the card, bet him in round 1 at these kind of odds, especially when this could be a weird dispersion, but I've run it for 2 years, almost 3 years. Like, he's ridiculous in round. He shows up prepared every single week, and it's insanely consistent. He finished top 10 here last year in round 1 as well, and he only gained 2.3 strokes, I think you needed to finish top 10. There's only 72 people in this field, and in the Discord I rattled off, there's 72 people in the field, and it's made up of Johnny Vegas, Brian Campbell, Tom Kim, Matty Schmidt, let's go Glover, Novak, Coley. Are these guys really going to do anything on this golf course to rival Scottie? Maybe they finish top 40 or something, but I think he's absolutely live to finish inside the top 10 as well. So I've gone over to a different place and grabbed him at top 10, minus 110 as well for the first round. It's highest paid in full at that book. So that's very appealing to me, is the fact that highest paid in full for a top 10 could be like 1/5 of the field, really, because you need to get to 13 guys tied for top 10, and that's 1/5 of the field kind of thing. So it's maybe 15. I don't know. My math has got really bad. No Laying Up called me out on my integers adding up, and it wasn't good. But also shout out to them for putting my tweet up there. But I think this is the market's taking him on, Spence. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean, you said it at the very beginning, just talking about what his 25th percent, like he's gained 5 strokes in a round. Like, there's very few players that are going to gain 5 strokes in a round in any round that they're going to play. So I don't disagree with you on that. I actually think that top 10 bet that you just mentioned is everything has risk to it at the end of the day. But for that to be 110, I'm a little bit surprised to see that number. It feels like a spot where Scottie's upside is so high, and you kind of mentioned it just even at the beginning part of the show, to where he is spotting the field one round at some random point where he's not putting the pieces together. Every other round that you're looking at, he's like a top 10 performer in the field, and he's skyrocketing up leaderboards. And whatever this was with Scottie recently, where he has not produced in round 1, you are correct. He is one of the most informed, always going to give you his best result, always going to kind of find whatever the best is. And I mentioned this for whatever this is worth. Like, there are certain courses for him that I think that are better or worse at the end of the day, where some of that skill advantage becomes a larger gap than what you see over the rest of the field. I don't know if this is, yes, I agree with you. And I think anytime you get predictive course nature, that's kind of the Scottie Scheffler recipe to begin with, just because he is so good at what he does. It's probably a step below what Augusta would be, but like, it's in that very next 1B tier, to where this is a venue that I would expect Scottie to be able to use some of those skill advantages. And, I know we spent the first 5 minutes of this section talking about all the players we were betting to take him on with, but like, I'm going to be very not surprised when Sunday rolls around and Scottie wins this tournament by 6 shots. And it's like, well, we shouldn't have put money into that market. That should have been the first sign of like, that was a bad idea.
Oh, buddy. It's like such a lottery, because it's surprising if he doesn't do it, but it's also surprising that I've constantly reminded myself that he'd never played well at the Amex. He's never played well there. He won it by like 4 million shots. Like, he turned that tournament into a complete snooze halfway through Sunday, despite what Siwoo was getting up to in the gang, but the comparisons between Augusta and this golf course are absurd. Bubba, Adam Scott, Decky, like all these Augusta winners have won here. Scottie has won Augusta twice and never won here. He's never finished top 5 here, which to me, the dam's wall is going to crack. It's cracked. The water's gushing out. It's just when it's going to just come tumbling down. It could be this week, man. Like the course fit makes so much sense for him from a long-term perspective that it's so perplexing that he hasn't succeeded yet. Now that he's even better putter on Poa. I mean, he had his best putting performance of a round on Poa surface at Pebble last 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he continues that kind of putting, he's unstoppable. So hopefully he starts off hot. I'd be quite sad if he doesn't. We'll see how it goes, Spence.
It's I mean, not that this is a reason why you're doing it. It is a weird hedge type of a spot too when you take him on in round 1, because if he does skyrocket to the top, at least there's something that's coming back from it.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, you can jump in at the 8-1 odds that they leave out there when he's 17 shots back. So it's with 5 strokes gained on a spike round, that can be made up in a day. It's insane, man. It's truly, truly insane. Let's dive into your next guy, Spencer. I'm going to pull up your man and someone that I'm very bullish on going forward from a long-term perspective, particularly in majors. Harris English, Spence. Tell me why you like Harris English at 50-1 this week.
So I think I've even told you this a million times on air, Byron, when we used to do our show together. One of the things that I love looking at in my model are players that I did not necessarily think were good course fits the week before, who find a way to overperform from what my projection would be. And, you look at Harris English's result last week at Pebble. I think he came 24th at the end of the day with it. My model had him as the 50-somethingth best player in the field. And, sure, there's going to be things that are right and wrong with it at the end of the day. But if you look at the actual fade candidates that I took on, and that's one of the ways you end up winning 10 units is your fade candidates when you're playing a million matchups end up being right. I faded English, which funny enough ended up being a push on that bet. I had Jason Day against him and English eagled the final hole. That was an unfortunate outcome there. But I faded Goddard, I faded Cameron Young, and all those guys I think are much better course fits this week. These are all names for DraftKings. I think you can go right back down the well and kind of just ignore what you saw from them last week. But English specifically, of all those fade candidates I had, he was the only golfer to finish inside of the top 35. And I think if you look at what he is doing this year, it's a lot of top 25, 30 performances where nothing has really popped yet. But if you go a little bit deeper into the data, and anybody who listens to me a lot will know I run things from such a long-term perspective that sometimes it's ridiculous that we're looking at rounds from the beginning part of 2025 when we're at the very end of what will be 2026 here. And I still have some of that data at a much lower rate entering the mix. But if you actually dive into the Harris English profile of what he has done this year, he is the number 2 player for me in strokes gained off the tee. That is even something that if you take it from a deeper perspective of it, he is still a top 15, 20 player from a 2-year running model on this. And I think when you get him in one of these wet courses and you kind of think of that American style of a European sort of golfer that's able to scramble and putt and traverse their way through the course. And now if you're telling me Harris English's driver is going to perform at this level, I thought he was one of the more mispriced players in the market. And when you see him specifically, one being a name that really never grades well for me in a lot of spots, and then 2 being inside of the 50 range for me in a 80-man field, and now jumping here to a top 12 golfer, that speaks volumes of what my model thinks he can do at this course. And we've talked about course history being predictive. Golfer that has put together 2 straight quality finishes here. I really like him in a lot of areas. It's obviously asking a lot to win a golf tournament with Scottie and Rory and Fleetwood and all these guys, but there's variations that you can bet him as a top 5. And there were a lot of matchups involving him that entered the market that I thought were all very doable routes to consider. I took one of them. We can talk. That one right there. I took him over Oberg. Unfortunately, that number is nuked into the stratosphere at this point. I think it's out to 160, and that's not even, I try to take credit for some of them. Sometimes that's a combination of I pushed it a little bit, but as off with the data golf numbers as I was last week, Data Golf seems to be in agreement with me on this one, and I think they equally nuke this market alongside.
Yeah, I mean, Ludwig is a clear fade candidate when it comes to a market like a matchup because his consistency's just not there right now. Would we be shocked if he showed up and won this thing somehow? No, he's got the talent to do that, but his current form is cheeks. Like he's just not doing anything at the moment. So I actually love that bet, Spence. -1. What would you say if people could find a number your max would be?
I mean, my proper when I initially ran it was in I believe it was the low 130s. I'll have to go check.
Okay, somewhere around there.
I mean, you're unfortunately kind of way past that total at this point.
Okay. Well, another reason to join the Model Maniac Patreon, another reason to join Spencer's Rotoballer Patreon Discord package over there. It makes far too much sense, especially when you're getting numbers. I always tell the people, like, my green fee gambler tier is I try not to like pride myself on selling picks, but if you are going to do that, you got to at least have picks that when you're betting them, the number moves so people can believe it's the right bet, even if it doesn't win. So you're still going to be losing, but you're losing less because you're getting the number at the right price, so that's how you make money long term.
I would wish that I was viewed less as of a tout and more in a different direction. Like I don't like the tout game. I know a lot of people sign up for the Rotoballer package to get my picks, and it's something that we've been trying to work on in the chat of like, take the model, try to find numbers. If you can originate prices for yourself and ideas, then you don't have to worry about like, did you beat the number once Spencer gave it? And I mean, like some of these plays get pulled off the board within 15 seconds of them being given, or just like, really, really move in a negative direction, positive. But if you're looking at being on the right side of it, but you are correct at the end of the day. I remember even through the cold run last year, that was kind of my thing that I told everybody over and over again is, look, markets are respecting us. They are respecting the action that's coming in. They are moving the number. I understand the bets are not winning, and I understand some of us have been limited at books, which is not a positive when you're losing bets and getting limited in the process. Like that's like the double whammy that ends up ensuing with it. But like I told them, look, if you beat numbers by enough, you will be profitable at the end of the year. It's easier said than done. And there is a play that we will talk about later that I am so on the wrong side of the movement. It's insane. And it probably has to do with the Masters comps that we talked about earlier with this player. But look, I mean, the goal is everybody's going to make mistakes. If I give 100 bets, I would be foolish to say all 100 of them are going to be exactly perfect. The math may show one thing, and at the end of the day, it may unfortunately move one way or another with it. And just because it moves one way or the other doesn't even mean it's correct or incorrect long term. Like sometimes it is public money where books just end up shifting off the price. But long term, Byron, you are correct. If you are beating prices and you are beating numbers, you should be profitable.
Yeah, and it's golf, dude. Scottie Scheffler just shows up randomly on the waste mat, like a golf course that he won his first tournament at, a golf course that you should expect him to win multiple times, shows up, plays like me and you, like literally chipping like me and you. And we couldn't predict, like that is just variability, man. I lost 3 units on Scheffler on Thursday at the waste management. It was half of the reason I lost 6.8 was on the world's best golfer, not knowing how to hit a fucking golf shot at all. So I don't know what to tell you about that, but what you can tell me, Spence, is we're going to do another matchup that you have here against my guy, your guy versus my guy. I have long-term aspirations for JJ Spawn. As you can see here, the model's grading him. I've got J-Day ahead of Spawn as well by 8 spots. J-Day's checking 3 boxes, Spawn isn't. And by the way, for people that don't know what the boxes are, we're checking hard and hellish conditions, micro model ranking, strokes gained over the last 12, 8, 4 months, and then 2026, course history, total finishing rates over here, my model rank, and driving distance. Those are the 7 things I'm looking for this week. Jason Day's checking 3 of those. So JJ Spawn just hasn't showed up, Spencer, this year. This is more of a fade than an endorsement on Jason Day, right?
Probably so. I mean, cold weather and Jason Day's back might end up being a WD at some point. But I think Spawn is extremely volatile. He has a similar profile for me when you look at upside versus safety of a name like Oberg, to where the ceiling potential has the ability to pop, but the floor, I wish that there was 156 players in this tournament. I would feel more comfortable with this edge being backed. If 15 to 18 players end up missing the cut, if Spawn can get himself there into the weekend, like there is spike nature in the profile. And I run this a couple different ways. The overall rank takes a little bit of the stats, the course history, the current form. That is where, for me, JJ Spawn is abysmal. He's outside of the top 50. The safety is going to be the same thing because it's going to take that course history that has seen him go 80th, 33rd. Well, 80th is a miscut in my model, but miscut 33rd, miscut 63rd. And then if you look at what he's done this year, the best finish you've gotten from him is a 40th, including the withdraw at the American Express before he teed it off that we never really got an answer what that was about on that.
No.
And if you could promise me he was healthy, like maybe there's a reason to say that this is like a little bit less of an advantageous route to go with it. But I don't know. Like, it's just like the stats have not been there for him. Some of the long-term history for this course is a lot better than what he has produced. Like, he's 18th in my model for weighted short game. He's 21st on strokes gained total on POA. He's 19th from some of those proximity ranges that merge in off the tee and then around the green and a couple other categories to get there. And then he's 20th in weighted scoring. So like all of that is really good. And that's why, like, for upside for me, he jumps into a legitimate top 30 win equity candidate on the board. I just, until he puts it together and actually provides a result, I have been fading him every single week. And I faded him last week with Justin Rose being the player that I ended up taking in that. And Justin Rose was abysmal and still won the matchup against him. So I'm hoping that it turns into a semi-similar thing to where, you know, give me a, I don't know, 17th place finish from Jason Day. And let's just hope that JJ Spawn continues to not put the pieces together.
Yeah. I'm, you know, from a long-term perspective, I mean, over the last 12 months, 13 months, he's still finishing inside the top 5, 1 in every 5 starts. Yeah. And he's played, 3 times this year already and not finished close to the top 5 yet. So, you know, I believe in him, but I totally agree. Like, he just doesn't got it right now. If I were to touch JJ, it is in maybe DFS at $7,500. If he comes in at 4 or 5% ownership,
sure.
You know, like, then you've got a guy that could out of nowhere just play some good golf. He's a very good long iron player. He's a great driver of the golf ball, but they put him on one of the featured groups, I think, or I saw him early in a round at Pebble, and he just looks pissy. He looks like someone's pissed in his Cheerios every single morning and forced him to eat it, throw it back up, and then eat it again. Because I don't understand what's wrong with the guy. Maybe he's got another health diagnosis that we're not sure of, or something. But golf is all about, like, it's a game of 6 inches. You know, you're either 6 inches in the water or not, or it's also the 6 inches between your ears, where you got to have it together. And he's just being a little bitch right now. You know, like, I don't know what his problem is. He needs to, like, dial it in, get zoned in, and play some good golf again, because I have way too much of him in best ball in, like, a round 1 pick. You know, like, I believe in this man. Do I believe in him in majors and things? No, but long term, I do. Right now, he's very disappointing. So, love this bet.
Yeah, I mean, the statistical profile is even good for this course, which is what makes it so confusing why he never shows up at this venue. But, yeah, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where matchups are different than outrights, and outrights are different than the other markets that you could be looking at. And you kind of have to know where you're playing. And like, it's like, we used to talk about this at, like, even DraftKings, if you're talking about DFS contests, certain players in single entry are going to be better or worse than they are in large field GPPs.
Facts. Yeah. JJ Spawn at this point is a GPP play.
Yeah.
Sprinkling him in. I'm not investing heavily in him right now, but I'm still believing in the long term. I'm almost certain your bet's going to take him solid. So we're going to rock and roll forward. Other bets we've made, Spence. I've got a couple that I want to share with the people as we're rocking and rolling here. Let me pull up my boy. He's not necessarily going to show up in any model or anything, but I feel like there's a ton of value to be had on the man that's name is Tom Hoge. Doesn't check a single box. Not surprising, because Tom Hoge is 210 to 1. He's a guy that people disrespect in the market. He was ridiculous numbers to start the Amex, where he's had good history. If you take a look at Tom Hoge's situation, the last 2 times he's played, he's finished 8th and 14th. I understand the recent form is a bit troublesome, but the 8th at the Amex and then the 12th at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am are 2 places that he's played well at. I wasn't on him at the Farmers, and I wasn't on him at the Waste Management because he's never played well there. So I feel like I'm kind of in a good groove with Hoge right now, and we are starting to see that he's an absurdly good iron player, Spencer, but he's ranking as 47th in the model. Like, if you run what does your 2-year data suggest for Tom Hoge's approach play right now? It still should be relatively good considering you got 2024 numbers in there still.
I would have just 2025 as it goes on. It'll keep the 2025. So it's a running 2-year model would be the better way to say it than some concurrent running 2. But yes, you are correct. He is 7th in my model. And by the way, that answer is looking at the weighted proximity for this specific venue. So it's taking the long-term rates of where the proximity numbers are coming in from and comparing him to everybody else in the field. He is the 7th best proximity player for this specific course over, we will call it I'll keep calling it a 2-year thing just because I'm so used to saying that on air, but over my 2-year running model, he's 7th.
Yeah, my data is using the last 12 months, last 8, last 4, and 2026 data. So, it's kind of there, it's kind of not. But what's really impressive is he's putting. He hasn't lost strokes putting this year yet. And he's gained on approach at the 2 spots that he should have gained on approach. So I think he's got a good crack at rolling through again here. And I just bet the 210 to 1 at DraftKings because it's 210 to 1, Spence. I'm investing 1/10 of a unit here to win 21 units. Am I expecting him to win? No. Am I expecting him to finish inside the top 5 at 24 to 1? Ties paid in full. If he finds the irons in soft conditions and putts his brains out, I mean, Tom Hoge can do it. Am I expecting him to do that? No, it's still 24 to 1. Don't mind a top 10 number, though, for Tom Hoge at plus 950. I feel like we've got an 8th and a 12th here in the last 2 years. I feel like that's right in the moment that he can do. Or 14th, sorry, one of the two. Either way, you know what we're talking. Yeah, 14th and an 8th. He's got a 12th and an 8th this year. And I'm happy about that. But the biggest market I've vested at a full unit in this situation is the top 20 at plus 355. So if he cashes his top 20, we've only invested half a unit elsewhere on Tom Hoge, including the outrights. We'll take care of a 3-unit profit right off the top, even once we take all of his other exposure out. So I'm really loading up on the top 20 number here. I feel like ideally, I'd like a couple more green boxes in 2022, 2021, but still getting a 3.5 to 1 ticket for a top 20 where he's cashed that twice and he's done it twice at the 2 courses that he's played at well. So that's basically all of the data is not going to prove anything. I've got him on the screen, but it's more of a maniac play and kind of just finding a groove that's been profitable for me. If I lose my 1.5 units here, I'm still up lots on Tom Hoge this year. So thoughts on Tom Hoge, Spencer Aguiar?
I have him higher than you do. I have him 39th in my model, which, is one of those things where if you are taking numbers, whether it's 12 months or 24 months or whatever it stretches to, I think that's a solid return for what you're getting on this course. Yeah. And if you look at it, I believe I saw you tweet this. You had him last week for a top 5 at Pebble, was it? Or top 10 or everything? Or
top 20. Yeah, I cashed the 2 units on the top 20 and he missed out on making birdie on 18 to finish top 10.
Well, that's kind of my point to that, even with that answer being given. Like, he was 1 shot away from that moving even further up the board with it. And I think when you play these placement markets, there are certain players that have more upside than others. And you have to be aware that as you move it up the board into a top 5 and a top 10, you're removing the number of spots that are actually possible to hit into with it. But you're usually 1 or 2 shots away from what ends up being a 14th place finish to, what could end up being a top 5 result with it. So I think that top 20 number, it does probably look like one of the better bets on the board just from the pure price that you're getting on it. I don't do a ton of placement bets at the end of the day, but just from an actual value perspective in my model, if I'm looking at these golfers that are even if we're just using DraftKings price here for DFS contests, he's $6,300. He's one of the best values that I have on the board at that price. I mean, when you're a top 40 projected player and your price is if you're like a bottom 10 name in the field, you're always going to kind of find some value there. And that should naturally work across the board in a lot of those areas of like the top 20. Maybe if you start pushing it up a little bit more, it changes. But yeah, I think that's a good number.
Let's go, baby. I'm going to jump from one top 20 to another top 20 and say Tony Finau, top 20, plus 340 at DraftKings, tires paid in full. I believe there's another book that's got fans and stuff that you can grab it at plus 360 still right now. Tony Finau's cashed this bet, Spencer, in the top 20 market for the last 5 of 7 appearances at Riv. We're getting plus 340. He's a fantastic ball striker on these long golf courses. If we take a look at his long-term numbers, they're also pretty cheeks, but it is what it is. You know, we're kind of honing in on the course history. Yeah, if you take a look at what Finau's been up to, second in 2021, 33rd in 2022, 20th and 19th the last 2 times he's played here. So he's definitely, and you can't say that he was playing his greatest golf for the last little while. You know, since this lawsuit, it's been a bit of a problem. But he gained the most strokes putting at Pebble Beach last week on POA. They'll be putting on POA again. Since the Farmers Insurance, he changed to a new putter that's got like a white thick middle piece that's really helped him like line up better. And he's been gaining pretty much strokes putting since he's moved to that putter. So he's no longer having to make up the putting strokes that he's lost with the ball striking. He can just live off the ball striking, reap the rewards there, because the putter's at least going to probably be neutral, hopefully, with this new putter. If it shows up and provides us with some upside, Tony Finau top 10 plus 930. Like, I'll take that happily. You know, I think he's finished runner-up here twice, Spence, in the last 7 times. So he's definitely got that kind of upside. We've seen him with 2 top 20s now in the last 2 starts, an 11th at the Farmers and an 18th at Pebble. Love that. Then I'm going to be going top 5 with him, 24-1. I'm laddering this man all the way to 210-1 to win the tournament. I mean, that is a ridiculous number that was out there on DraftKings yesterday. We are looking for guys that have good baseline ball striking. He had fantastic returns on the ball striking front at Torrey. He's always played well there. He's never lost strokes on approach at Riv in the last 7 starts. He's never lost really strokes ball striking at Riv in the last 7 starts. Now, if we get this putter to show up, it can put him over the top. And in fact, I've used Tony Finau as my one and done. Like, I've got desperate early for no reason in particular, but this is how I ride. So Colin Morikawa was less than 1% on a Pebble. He's got great course history. Yeah, I'll take a second place, another one. Yeah, get $1.8 million with no one else is on him. So your thoughts on Tony Finau, Spencer? I think, did I see you have a bet on him?
I do have a matchup on him, which is going to kind of contradict a couple of the things I'm going to say. Because I think the way you were backing him specifically at those like 210-1 numbers are probably the better route to go with it. I still think Finau is extremely boomer bust at the end of the day. However, that ceiling output is there in the Finau profile. And I feel like when I look at my model this year, I have faded him, I don't know what we're at, 4 or 5 times this year in different iterations of markets, whether that be full tournament matchups where kind of got a little lucky on one where I took Andrew Novak against him at the Farmers and Finau shot 6 under on Sunday and Novak matched him to make that bet get across the finish line. There's been a lot of in-tournament matchups where I have faded him. I faded him last week with Ryan Fox. I kind of like Ryan Fox this week also. I think that's another name to look at in some of these like long shot ticket bets and try to spike something at 200-1 plus. But Finau's upside is really, really large this week. And the fact that in my model, and like to give you a comparison's sake, because I think it's important to kind of just look at the two. In Phoenix, which would be a course that you would expect him to be good at. Can you still hear me, Byron?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm frozen on my end right now, so I should too many tabs open on my window right now.
Oh, you're fine.
My computer's been doing this.
You good?
Yeah, my computer's been doing this every single like time I go on air for some reason. But what I was going to say is, if I was trying to bring up the WM Phoenix Open, my computer doesn't have the ability to right now not lag on itself as I'm trying to find. But the point is Finau was outside of the top 90 of my model in that tournament. And if you look specifically here, he's inside of the top 35 for me. And I understand that may not seem like a number in a 72-man field, that is extremely impressive. But you have to remember, Finau has absolutely nuked a lot of his statistical profile. So for him to be grading as well as he is for this course, with the course history being the way that it is, and the numbers lining up how they are within my sheet, I think that this is a spot where Finau top 10 is very, very much in play. How much further he can get than that, I do not know. But like, I am not going to be shocked if Finau finds himself in the final group on Sunday with a real chance to take this thing down. And there were not a lot of matchups with Finau in the space that I could find. And the Brian Harman profile is not that bad in my model. I think I probably have him close to where you have him in that 50-something at the range there. Whenever my computer starts working again, I can get back to that. But yeah, it's just, I'm really betting on Finau in this position.
The thing is, like, just looking at the three things that we see on the screen here, Spencer, we're going to ignore like the overall grading of the micro model and the rankings. Event history, Finau's got Harman waxed, like completely waxed. Recent form, Brian Harman has shown up. He's a mental midget and he's a midget. Like it's both, you know, like he made 2 eagles on the 2 par 5s in round 4. Those were the only 2 things he did. Got to the final 3 holes, and I think he played the final 3 holes like 5 over par. He just implodes as well. So I think he's like floor is, it's like on the floor. You know, it's as high as him, and that is not very high. Tony Finau, I think, at least with the ball striking at a golf course like this, it doesn't have a lot of penalties. You know, like places like Waste Management Phoenix Open, where there's tons of water and OB and stuff, like cactuses. It's a problem. At a course like this, the distance Finau provides is, you know, you can still go find your ball so long as you're hitting it in the right spot, and it seems like he does do that. So I love that. And then if you just take a look at the overall profiles, Tony's like really bad when conditions are a little easier, more birdies need to be made, things like that. He leans on the ball striking in hard and hellish conditions. I think conditions are going to be hard, right, Spence? Like round about -5 under par for scoring average, -0.5 under par for scoring average this week is kind of what I'm thinking. So the easier it gets, the less chance I think Finau is going to have to play well. Yeah, so it needs to play relatively difficult. But other than that, I mean, I think the Harman situation is untouchable at this point, especially on a course like this in the cold conditions, long, like
long wet course where he's super short off the tee. I also have him 50. I think it says 56 in your model. I have him 56 in my model, and there's a borderline upside path for him. Which is kind of a weird answer to give, at least from like a statistical perspective, but the safety number gets worse than what the overall rank is. And with the overall rank already being 56, you kind of talked about it, that floor is extremely low for him. And even with this being a fringe cut, I'm kind of just trying to take as many of those floor positions that I can against golfers that I think that they have the ability at any given time to shoot an 80 on one of those challenging days. And if Finau can work himself into the top 20, I would feel very good about this bet getting across the finish line.
Amen. That'll be I mean, I will take a top 5 from Finau. T5 on the money would be just fine by me. It would almost be worth a top 10 cash, an outright cash if I've laddered it like the way I have, right? So if he finishes top 5, we're cashing like 10, I think 11 units. So that would be ideal. Somebody that I have kind of far down in the model, 17th in the model though, is Patrick Cantley. And I've got him for a top 20, Spencer, at probably plus 120, I think, or minus 120. It's minus 120 at the book that's got the Mississippi Rivers going on, you know, and that's what Ty's paid in full too. 3rd, 4th, and 15th finishes at Riviera in 4 of the last times he showed up here. He just cashed the 13th at the Amex, and he just cashed the top 20 at Pebble last week. If you take a look at his top 20 rates, it's easily like his best kind of metric. He's finishing inside the top 20 50% of the time. He's got great course history here. He's got some good form on the courses that matter. So I kind of like how that's rolling this week. Give me Patrick Cantley in the top 20 market again this week at minus 120 on a course that's going to need some distance. He's actually got some decent pop when it comes to driving distance. Top 30 in the field, top half of the field. That's solid. Going to hit tons of greens this week, and whether or not he can make the putts, that remains to be seen, Spencer. So I'm banking on his safety in the top 20 market for some element. I know that you will be banking on Patrick Cantlay with a bit more upside this week.
I number grabbed it when he was out there at 33-1. By the way, Byron, you do a very good job of maneuvering through shops and books and not quite saying it. I was not, and I'll be very aware to not accidentally mention something here because I am the king. I used to do podcasts. I can name other like places, right?
Yeah, sure. You're the guest. I'm not, I can't stop you from saying anything.
Okay. I used to do podcasts over at Action Network, and we were affiliated to a book, and it always had to be to that book. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say every single episode for about 2 years, I would get a message of like, how have we not learned you cannot name place X? And why do we keep announcing what the book is that is not the sponsor of the show? So I give you credit for being very delicate with that situation. I know that it's a tough thing to maneuver through on it. But at the end of the day, when we were talking about Patrick Cantlay, your bet is the much more like reasonable path to consider. I have bet Patrick Cantlay so many times in the outright market to the point where there is not a single person in the entire world, and I truly believe that I could convince myself personally to actually put a wager on Patrick Cantlay. I have never hit an outright on him. I had him at the Genesis in 2024. He took a big lead there for a second, and then he absolutely shit himself on Sunday to where I think he was 6, so he might have actually shit himself on the course. I think he had a bad stomach ache, which is where that went south for him. But
didn't everyone? Jordan Spieth got disqualified for having the shits. I think.
I don't remember why he got disqualified.
Yeah, he left the scoring area to go take a dump, and then didn't sign the scorecard in time, and then came back to sign it, and he was DQ'd.
Yeah, my girlfriend asked me, and I didn't look it up. She was like, she was looking at my model when I had it up in the background. She was like, why is there a DQ next to Jordan Spieth's name? And I'm like, I don't quite remember. I figured he probably used something that he shouldn't have used or forgot to sign something correctly. But that's, I guess that's one way to go about it. But yeah,
shout out to Caitlin's. Both of us with the Caitlin's there, Spence.
Yeah, very very similar in a lot of ways. We both build models with PGA Tour stuff, and
both date models.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day with Cantlay, you have to believe something in the numbers to where you're going to buck the system to where this almost has to be this week's version of Colin Morikawa to where he doesn't win for 3 years and then he finally gets himself back across the finish line. And I've always said this with Cantlay, like in a couple different ways. One, California POA, if it's going to happen, California POA is always going to be the most natural spot. I also think that this wet, cold, like grimy sort of conditions benefit the Patrick Cantlay game at his very best. I remember that there were old iterations of models for like the Open Championship that I always found value on Patrick Cantlay in a lot of this sort of weather. So it's not surprising to me. He was the number one player in my model in 2024. I had a huge outright on him, and that was just I was also sick myself that day. God. I was sick in bed the entire time, and I didn't see the round, and I checked my phone thinking like, oh, I probably won. And I looked and I was like, oh, this is not good. Cantlay has gone massively in the wrong direction.
And that was that was Decky when he just, yeah. I think that is the most strokes gained in a final round by a winner since 2018 in my database. I think I ran the numbers. Like that round 4 from Hideki was the best round 4 from a winner like in the last 8 years, which is like sickening to think about. But we are neither. Let's just get off of Patrick Cantlay, get him off the screen over here. Yeah. I'm going to dive into a Victor Hovland top 20 over here for us. He's just one spot above Patrick Cantlay. He's cashed this top 20 bet every single time he's played the Genesis Invitational. He's built for these kind of ball striking courses. I think he's also built for wet weather. I mean, he was wearing fucking water wings practicing the other day, just getting ready for Riv. So those floaties are going to be in the bag if he needs them. He's got them. So cashing that 4 times in a row, he's been pretty solid in the top 20 market the last couple. I believe, what did he get up to at Pebble? Did he finish top 20? I should.
He was bad.
Okay. Also,
I had an outright on him. He was
okay.
Yeah, he was dead at the very start of it.
It's not a golf course for him anyway, that much. Not to like shame you. you can bet wherever you want. What I'm trying to say is this is a better golf course for him this week. So we'll see what he can get up to. He's also just never really lost ball striking around this venue. Putts very well around here, which for someone that doesn't putt very well, that's good to know. And, Victor finding himself inside the top 20 like 42% of the time, but I'm more leaning into the course history element here for old Vic. Nothing more to say about that. Typically avoids losing strokes around the green at this kind of a golf course too. I think the Kikuyu rough seems to help him, like with his technique of getting the ball out of thick rough versus, you've always spoken about you love Victor at places where you can putt on the surfaces from off the green. You can do a bit of that here too with the Kikuyu, with some of the false fronts too, I think, right?
You know what? I'm starting to come around on Victor a lot this week. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and if we talk about this being a wetter course during this iteration of the event, he is the number one player in my model in expected proximity for this course, and that's kind of where the course history comes from. But if it's not as dry of a venue, when I'm diving deeper into some of these short game statistics, and you mentioned one of them, like just the ability to be able to putt is one factor to it. But if these greens are slower than you normally get, if you look at my model in 3-putt percentage, he is the 58th player. So if these greens got extremely fast on him, the ball's going to run away. He's going to run himself into problems. If these greens are slower and he doesn't actually have problems with like lagging it up closer to the hole in these spots, between 5 to 10 feet with the putter since last year, he's the 13th player in my model. So like as bad and as all over the place as the putter's been, the putter derails him on these 3 putts more than his actual ability to hit a lot of these putts from 5 to 10 feet. So receptive greens that are going to accentuate that iron play. I was not planning to be like for DraftKings contests on Victor Hovland. Like the more I look at these numbers as we talk about this, I think he might actually be a really good bounce back candidate this tournament.
I think so. It's a fantastic bounce back spot for him just based off of what he's got up to here. I just think and just the general profile that Victor Hovland produces on courses like this. In these kind of conditions, we'll see what he can do. Speaking of sponsors, people, take a second, listen to some DraftKings. We really appreciate them sponsoring the show. There's no better way to get closer to the action than with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. Right now, our partners at DraftKings are giving new customers a shot to play free for their share of millions in prizes with their first deposit on the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. Simply download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and enter promo code FGD during sign-up to play free for your share of millions with your first deposit. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most states. Restrictions apply. Terms, DraftKings.com. Minimum $5 deposit required. One single use, $3 ticket rewarded that expires in 14 days. Ends March 25th. See terms at DraftKings.com/promotions. Sponsored by DK. Boom stuff. Thank you, DK, for sponsoring the show. We have got another 20-something minutes to go with this still, so you guys need to hang around as we have got, geez. Have you gone onto another show and watched a podcast that has this many bets with this much information about every single freaking bet that we've got so far? Hit the like, hit the subscribe, show us some love, people. We appreciate all of you in the chat as well. Spencer, let's get to Ben Griffin. First round lead off the top rope, 45-1. I'm going to go over here to the right-hand side, find my round 1 strokes gain for everybody, and I'll even just do the power rating just because I've got ADD. So we're going to rock and roll there. As you can see, don't have the 3 new guys in here, but here's Ben Griffin, 6th in my model for power rating. He's 45-1 over at a book that's got the palace, from Alan in The Hangover. He was wondering if that actually was where the king lived. He does not. But if you filter by round 1 strokes gained over here, you can see that Ben Griffin has gained 2 strokes on average over the last 12 years, 12 months. 12 years would be impressive. He wasn't even on tour by then. On the last 12. And before the last 2 tournaments, he's kind of struggled at the Waste Management and Pebble. But prior to that, in 7 straight starts, he has finished no worse than 8th place in round 1. Like, he is Mr. Round 1 right now. He's kind of been drifting backwards after round 1s lately. His best finish so far is T19 at the Sony. It was the first start of the year. He was like nonstop inside the top 20 last year. If you take a look at his actual numbers, he's inside the top 20 53% of the time. And he's only cashed that once this year in like 4 or 5 starts. So that was much higher at one point. But I do think the number kind of is too tempting for me at this price to leave him off the card, given how good he is in round 1. And we've also seen him at venues, kind of like we were speaking with Victor there, Spence. He's not a good short iron guy. He's not a wedge guy. You want Ben Griffin with long irons in his hand, mid irons in his hands, leaning on the short game. He's incredibly good around the greens. So I think I'm going to go Ben Griffin as well for a top 10 at the place that's, I don't even know how to kind of situation there. And they play in ties in full for first rounds. So you can get him at plus 320 for that market. Remember, he's done the 7 in the last 9 starts. After round 1, he's been inside the top 10. So at plus 320 at a golf course that's going to reward some good ball striking from the grifter, I think he's going to absolutely take care of business in the short game department as well. I think it's a great course fit for him given his current landscape of his game, Spencer. Thoughts on the Griffin man?
I think that's an interesting way to back Griffin this week. I've been conflicted on him. Maybe it's more so that I really liked Chris, and this is not a wager. I'm just going to give a random bet on here that I ended up not getting placed. But I considered Chris Gotterup against Ben Griffin in a matchup. The reason why I did not end up doing it, really like the Gotterup numbers on him. I think Griffin is probably too good of a profile to take on, and I don't really want to get into the spot where I'm openly fading top 25 golfers in my model against maybe a little bit more of a, I don't know if we can call Gotterup a boomer bust candidate just because my model did not like him last week. So I don't think that result should necessarily be anything more than a blip on the radar with it. But I don't know. I don't have a strong take one way or another on Griffin, but I will say that I decided to not place that wager specifically because Griffin's short game and his ability with the long irons did grade really well in my sheet. And I don't really feel like getting caught in one of those spots to where, like, kind of like you talked about, where he goes out and he shoots whatever under par in round 1 and he's the first round leader. And then, yeah, maybe he stumbles over the next 3 days, but he still finishes in 7th place, 9th place, 11th place. It's like, I don't really want to play that game. It doesn't feel worth opposing him on it. So I don't have a problem with the Griffin play in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at betting to win $100 every single time all of these guys played in the top 20 market, Ben Griffin's returned $658, people. Like, it's the number 1 return in the top 20 market over the last 12 months. So it's crazy. It's crazy to see his regression after getting married. We all know that this can happen, but I'm going to take a gamble on him in round 1. I think that's the market for him. You know, like, it's obvious when you take a look at his splits that this is where you want Ben Griffin. He just kind of seems to dwindle away over the weekend on average. You know, anything's possible. He could find some groove on a nice course that I really like for him. We'll see what he can do. Let's scoot over to someone that's kind of been struggling this year and somebody that's been playing phenomenal. Spencer, I think I'm going to join you on this one. Ryo Hitsutsuni minus 110 over Corey Connors. That's the bet that you have another matchup here for us.
I hope you're correct. This is the one that worries me the most of all the matchups that I've talked about that have moved in a positive direction, beating lines by 20, 30, 50 plus points. This one, you can find Ryo. I don't know what the best number out there is right now. You could probably get him at plus 110, plus 115, plus something if you shop around on it. I think what is happening in the Connors profile might be a little bit of that Augusta splits to where it's like he plays that venue really well all the time. And I don't know if there's people out there that are kind of seeing that and backing him. My model really does not like Corey Connors this week. The current form is not where I want it to be. The course history, minus the last time he played, it hasn't really been that great. The statistical profile has a lot of marks in this. This was technically the largest edge that I had in my sheet, and I played it for the smallest risk, funny enough, just because I'm a little concerned that this might be the spot with Ryo where the castle crumbles on him a little bit, and what we've seen early in the year moves in reverse. But like, I have this portion of my model, Byron, that it tries to find 3 different factors for head-to-head pricing. One of it is just purely a statistical outlook. The other one takes into a lot of the count of the course history and the current form. And there's a third one that kind of merges all of those and then throws in a lot of like sharp movement that I throw into it and just some different factors. And it spits out a price for me of what should be proper. From just a statistical answer, this is the highest a number has ever been in my sheet in the history of me running numbers. And I should be saying like, this is the biggest smash spot of all time. I am just a little bit afraid that the recent form that we've gotten from Rio has massively overinflated this number. I think whether you get it at minus 110 or you get it at a plus number, I'm going to continue betting him until we see something opposite happen. I am a little bit concerned, though, that this might be the implosion spot where something goes wrong.
There's always, I mean, Spencer, with any bet, that's always a possibility. You know, it's just 100%. How it goes. I mean, the first time Scottie Scheffler had a really bad round was when I was like fully invested on him in Thursday. You know, that's just how shit goes down. But I didn't think he was going to play that great at the Sony because I like him at like this kind of a venue where he's a much better long iron player than he is wedge. And it seems like he's shown up this year and just putting his brains out as well, which isn't a bad thing at all. You know, like we know that the baseline is there with the ball striking. So I'm not too concerned about that at all with him. My model's not necessarily jumping on board just yet. I think Corey's got some good finishes from, you know, the last couple. He's obviously got some good track record to lean on. But so far this year, it's been a bit of a struggle from Corey Connors. And then when it comes to course history as well, he's missed 2 cuts. He's finished 61st and 24th, you know. So basically like a Rio top 20 years, it's Gucci Mama, you know, I would imagine. And the way he's playing, Spence, let's go. He seems in such a good place. He spoke in an interview where in English, and he's got broken English. You know, it's not perfect, but it's still very understandable. And he was joking about sipping sake bombs out of his water bottle instead of actually drinking water. And just the way he like giggled after saying, I'm just joking, man. You know, like it's just so funny to like see that he's that kind of a youngster as well. You know, like good mentals, and he's kind of handled the pressure pretty well when he's been in it at times. You know, we had a really impressive showing at the Farmers where he basically cashed that second place for himself there when Rose was running away. It was like a secondary tournament that he was trying to win, and he still took care of business, you know, under the gun with Rosie in that group. I fancy it a lot. So we're going to go there. Someone else that's been struggling a lot lately is JJ Spahn. We've spoken about him already. Let's go to Max Homa and Shane Lowry. Spence, you've got another matchup for those two gentlemen. Talk to me about what's going on over there as I try and find these two names.
Yeah, this one, unfortunately, has kind of run away a bit also. I think the best you can find in the space is around that minus 140 mark now.
Okay.
Homa is a very perplexing option that does sometimes seem to burn me in spots. You look at the course history, we want to talk about players that know how to play Riviera. It is just an onslaught of top 20 finishes, including that victory that he had in 2021. I am just afraid with Max Homa at this point that the game remains broken in locations where it should not be broken. I get that he is spiking here and there to give you some quality finishes, but you know, go to the Farmers where he missed the cut. That was a spot where I think everybody was ready to fully jump back in, and then he disappoints by not making the weekend. I don't know what to expect from him necessarily here with the course history, but the fact that we have a cut, the fact that the statistical profile, which is going to never love him to begin with, like you have him 67th. I have Homa a little bit higher than you, 49th. Yeah. But if I run this from an upside, just like stats and don't take course history, he's the 64th player in my model. So we're very similar there. And then the Lowry return that you're even higher than I am on him. I have him 13th overall. I have Lowry inside of the top 6 for safety. So I think this is just a nice spot to be able to take on Homa, a nice spot to be able to back a safe golfer in Lowry in a location where this number moved because Homa is just not sharp in the space at this point. And you're kind of seeing it in every matchup across the board.
Yeah, no, I don't have Tom Kim, Adam Scott, or Homa in my model because they weren't in the field last week. That's kind of the situation I'm dealing with because Best Buy doesn't know how to fix my problem, even though I'm paying them premium plus stuff. Anyway, that's my gripe for the show. Here's my micro model, Spencer, where you're basically taking each individual hole basing it off the average drive that happens on that hole and the person's average driving distance above the field or below the field, getting a good feel for how far they're going to hit their drive on this hole, how long of an approach shot they're going to have in from that drive. If they're in the fairway, if they're not, it depends how often they're going to hit the green in regulation. If you're in the rough, your green in regulation is going to go down based off the green in regulation at this golf course. 70% green in regulation rates on the first hole. Ridiculous hole, in my opinion. They should just change it to a par 4. And then once you figure out your GRR, you can figure out, okay, how they're going to do around the greens and how they're going to do putting on that hole. And then you can go from there. And Shane Lowry, not necessarily giving you the best off the tee metrics here. He doesn't have a ton of distance, but what he is going to offer you is tons of green in regulation. He's third in approach play this week for me on this golf course. He's fantastic in this range from 150 to 200 and not too bad either from 200 and out. Not the greatest compared to the rest of his strokes from 150 and in with the wedges, but he's a fantastic iron player. That's why you see him thrive in majors at times, because he's a good long iron player. Max Homa is broken mentally, kind of. You can't be this inconsistent and succeed on the PGA Tour. I think Lowry's a solid option to take on Homa with, Spencer. So, I mean, third in the micro model is saying a lot.
Yeah, 4 days to be able to hopefully have Homa go in the wrong direction, one of those. And you kind of talked about it with Lowry. Like the driving stuff, he doesn't have the distance that you would want to see. He's 60th in my model, but there are similar qualities that you would want to see. So like I looked at difficult fairways to hit that had a low penalty. I looked at off the tee in wet, cold conditions. It's kind of that European blueprint that we just keep going back to over and over again. Lowry was inside of the top 20 off the tee in both of those two areas. So I think it's a nice course fit for him for a golfer that looked really good last week. I had a matchup on him over Pendrith. Got a little dicey for 1 second there, but then Lowry turned it on Sunday. But I'm going to just keep kind of going back to the same guys that I have found success with if the market doesn't want to correct. And like, even with the answer with Rio, it's regardless of however nervous I am that Rio's not going to perform this week. It's like, if markets aren't going to change and they're not going to move numbers the way that they should, I still think there's an advantage to be had in it. If you want to even take it a step further than that, look at the Ben Griffin price that you just talked about of him being, I think you said it was in the top 20 market. Look for how long Ben Griffin's prices were not moved, regardless of all the results that he kept putting together. And it allowed bettors the ability to get these overinflated prices that they were able to hit on. And whether Griffin has been as clutch or as informed this year as we want to see, I understand that that's where the concern comes into play, but like, we're still at the price point, give or take, that we were getting on him 6, 7, 8 months ago. And he's a different player at this point. So I'm kind of just using that blueprint across the board with a lot of these names.
Let's go. Who is not the same player right now, Spence, is Rico Hoge. I was ultra bullish on him in best ball. I loved what I saw from the ball striking all year long. I mean, if you just take a look at his micro model rating, I mean, he's top 10 still for me in strokes gained approach, top 20 in green regulation rates, but the around the green play and the putting is abysmal, and the form this year has been nasty bad. So neither of these guys have played here before. The first good finish Rico had was a 24th at the Waste Management, and that's still not phenomenal. He tied Foxy there. So tell me what you're liking with Ryan Fox over Rico Hoge at minus 110.
Funny enough, I actually had Rico at the Waste Management in a matchup and did not win the matchup. Michael Kim ended up going birdie on Sunday from 30 plus feet, I believe, on both of them for that bet to not get across the finish line. So like, as great of a year as this has been so far to start, I think I'm up over 20 units through the first 5 events that we've put together. There's been a couple close calls, unfortunately, that have not gone in the right direction. And I'm kind of there with you with the Hoge profile coming into this year. He's a golfer with those ball striking statistics that I always want to try to find a way to back. And my model is just not seeing it this week with him really in any way that I tried to run the data for him. 65th overall in this field. Doesn't really get much better from an upside or a safety perspective either way. Like, he's kind of just flat across the board. The reason for that is he's not better outside of weighted scoring, which is some of that ball striking that can come into play. He's 24th in my model there. he is outside of the top 58 in the other 6 categories that I looked at. And I think when you specifically put him against a golfer like Ryan Fox, who I believe is, let me run this really fast. I think he is the best, I guess technically hit Satsune because the returns are so ridiculous on him. But on DraftKings for DFS contests, Fox would be the second best $6,000 value that I have. And it equates to the same exact answer here in the head-to-head market. The distance is going to be kind of where you want it to see for him to be able to compete. The weighted strokes gain total for how I ran it for this course in 2026 put him in the top 10. I have a course fit factor that talks about these wet, cold conditions. He's inside the top 15 there. Marginal on POA, would like to see better there. Short game has a couple red flags. That's not quite the perfect return. It's not going to ever be 100% ideal when we're talking about a guy that's 200 plus to 1 to win and 6,500. But I like this bet. I like this bet can still be found at 120. This one has not been moved quite as much. I still think that there's value in that. Like proper for me was closer to the minus 140 range. This is one of those situations where it's the best of both worlds, where I am fading a golfer in Hoge and I'm also backing a golfer that I really like in Fox. And when I can get that sort of a return, that's always one of those spots where I like to be a little bit more aggressive on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We will be chatting afterwards, so I know where I can find all these numbers, because there's a couple that, both of our models agree on unanimously. So I want to make sure that I haven't forgotten any other things. I think we've got so many goddamn bets in here. I have one more for you guys. Here we go. Aldrich Porchita, top 5, 55 to 1 over at the Cesars. Look, this is maniac play. I love Aldrich when it comes to driver-heavy golf courses that emphasize mid to long irons. I like him on Kikuyu. He's a South African boy. We grew up on that stuff. He knows how to handle it. He actually finished second at the Nedbank like 14 months ago in South Africa on Kikuyu grass at the Gary Player Country Club. So we've seen him play nicely at the Farmers as well. He was in the final round, the final group of the final round at the Farmers last year as well. So he knows how to handle himself on these big boy golf courses. I think this is a great venue for him. This is a ridiculous number. I'm betting a 1/10 of a unit to win 5.5. So be it. If he sucks, he sucks. I'm expecting him to suck, but if he spikes, he just finished T6 at the Charles Schwab last year randomly after like really bad results leading into it. I think this is a great course fit for him. I'm bullish on his upside, and this is a ridiculous number out there.
Distance and long iron proximity. I mean, those two boxes are going to get checked from him. And you put those two pieces together, anything's possible if you get hot with the putter at a 55 to 1 number.
I mean, he's hitting like he's top 15 in GIR rate, for this kind of a golf course. So the approach, strokes gained approach, a bit of a problem, but pound the greens, buddy. Pound the greens and make the putts. Give me a top 5 some way or another. There's top 20s at like 9 to 1. But I'm just going to sprinkle just 1/10 and just leave it alone. I'm not going to get too cute too soon. I'm doing that in other areas of my life. Friends, family, fans, thank you so much for tuning in. Spencer? Oh, we had one question about Bobby Mack. Any take on where Bobby Mack finds himself in your model this week?
I like McIntyre. He was one of those names that I didn't like quite as much at Pebble. Cameron Young, Goddard, McIntyre, English. That all popped as a top 15 play for me here. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can consider getting to him. And I'm just going to give one bet really quickly that I want to mention on the show.
Yeah.
If you can find the price anywhere in that 120, 125 range, Maverick McNeely over Jordan Spieth would probably be my favorite play of any of the matchups that I have.
Okay. So glad to know that I had that in there and didn't put it up because we had 1 million, but I couldn't agree with you more. Over Jordan Spieth?
There's probably, you could probably take a lot of people over Jordan Spieth, but it's one of those spots where it's the same thing that I just talked about. A player that I really like in McNeely, where you put him on POA, he's very savvy against a name in Spieth that I've been talking about some of those baseline projection outputs. Mm-hmm. Spieth was 12th place entering Sunday, should have been 55th on the leaderboard. We see him go in the wrong direction. Spieth is a walking implosion waiting to happen. And unfortunately, that does mean that there's an upside that comes into play that he could top 10 this tournament. And if that ends up being the case, I'll live with it. I just think Spieth's performance at Pebble of what people saw from him on television for a couple days has ballooned this, or shrunk this number, I guess is the better way to word that, into a territory where this was a very bettable price where you wouldn't have gotten this probably to start the year.
I couldn't agree more. Like, Mav has finished 24th, 10th, 13th. You know, like his finishes have been disappointing because he's fallen outside of the top 5 on Sundays. You know, like Spieth, anytime he's doing anything good, he's like heroically coming up the leaderboard from 30th or heroically falling down the leaderboard all the way. I mean, I was sweating a Russell Henley top 20 bet because he chipped in for Eagle, Spencer, on 18 to jump into the spot for T18 at the time. And then one other guy made a birdie to get inside the top 20, and that moved him to T19. Xander parred 18. Jordan Spieth, I don't know how many balls he hit out of bounds on 18 during the week. Did it again on Sunday. And I was worried about them coming down the stretch because they were going to make birdies and kick Henley to T21, and that was a 4.3 unit swing for me. So I bitch a lot about bad breaks. Huge break. Jake Knapp chipped in for Eagle on Sunday to jump inside the top 10 for me. He chipped in for Eagle on Saturday to jump inside the top 5 for round 3, top 5. So I've been running pretty hot. Like, I'm not going to lie. I've had some really good stuff happen, which it's about damn time, you know?
I've said this before on air, and I will stand by it. Like, you can be really sharp and all the bets can lose because you run badly on it. Like, I would rather just get lucky on bets. Like, there was a time when I started in this space when I was first making a name for myself. There's nobody, and I bitch a lot also about how poorly I run in spots. I'm trying in 2026 not to do that, and maybe that's crediting why the success is. Yeah, it's like meditating, been trying to be a little bit better with that. But people used to write me and be like, "Do you have a horseshoe up your ass?" Like, I would enter 18 in spots where I'm down a stroke, where guys would be putting from 13 feet for birdie, and my guy would be 47 feet putting for birdie. I'm like, all right, well, I lost. And I would check back, and my putt would go in, and the opponent's putt would miss, and I'd either push or win those wagers. So it's been nice. I've had a couple that I've mentioned that have been negative. I've also had a few that have gone in the right direction. I needed JJ Spawn to bogey his 18th hole last week against Justin Rose, which would have been the 9th hole because he played from reverse. Mm-hmm. But he ends up, it's a tough hole, but he ends up bogeying it. The Justin Rose ticket gets across the finish line. Needed Cootie to birdie at the end on an individual round matchup there. He birdies. Like, you and I mean, we'll never complain about getting lucky. You'll probably hear about the negative a little bit more than you hear about the positive, but I think that's every gambler in a nutshell. Like, you kind of just have a little bit more of that viewpoint of how badly can I run in spots where in reality, hopefully over the course of time, it plays itself out the way it should.
Yeah, it's ultimately what you're looking for. And that's the thing, is we keep preaching, we're trying to do stuff over a period of time. We're riding the edge over a period of time. These good breaks, they're going to disappear at some point. The bad breaks will show back up again. You know, this is just how this happens. But I do want to mention one more thing on Bobby Mack. I've got him ranked 7th in my model. He's priced 19th in DraftKings. That's a 12-point difference there, you know, like in pricing. So this is absolutely where I like Bobby Mack a lot. I love the putting. I love the green regulation rates for him. I think he's a great crappy weather golfer. He loves to bitch. So he's going to be bitching about the weather anyway, you know, so now he's got something actually to bitch about. So the essays, for those of you that don't know what's going on over here, it's Spencer Aguiar over here. Spencer Aguiar's bets, and then the ones that don't have essay are mine. So just in case you're just looking, you can see what the bets are and who they belong to as we speak. Pretty much any matchups we had with Spencer's. We are squad riding Tommy Fleetwood. You have got Patrick Cantley, and you've got Harris English at 33 and 50 to 1. I've got Tommy. I've got Rory. I've got Tom Hoge. I've got Tony Finau as my outrights. I've also got that Aldrich Potgieter top 5 at 55 to 1. Victor Hovland top 20. Patrick Cantley top 20. And a couple ladders for those other guys I just mentioned. So, Spencer, tell us where everyone can find you as we head out of here, my bud. Thank you so much for joining me. I've thoroughly enjoyed the show. We need to do it way more often.
I have missed this. This is, as I told you at the beginning part of the show, this is something that I used to look forward to every single week. It's always a fun, energetic, We give a lot of statistics. We talk a lot about numbers and math, but I think we do a pretty good job of also having fun throughout the show. So I very much appreciate you having me on. I agree. Let's do this again soon. If you're not doing so already, you can find me on Twitter or X at @TeeOffSports. A lot of stuff I put out throughout the week. I, as you know, Byron, I write more articles than I probably should at the end of the day. You can probably get 15 plus articles from me of what I'm actually putting out. And like you, which there's not a ton of people that do this, the two of us have a lot of showdown and in-tournament content. The weeks do not stop for either one of us once the tournament begins on Thursday. And I know that your showdown model and all the stuff you do, like there's a reason why that you are in tune with what's going on in the market and you are firing off bets throughout the week. It's the same exact way for me. My bread and butter more than anything else would be those in-tournament matchups. It's kind of where I'm trying to find my edge of where markets have moved in the wrong direction or moved a little bit too much based off of one performance with it. So if you're not doing so already, I'd love for you to give me a follow. Subscribe to Byron's Patreon, subscribe to my stuff at Rotoballer. There's a lot of love that goes around with the two of us, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Absolutely. We'll get to the point one day where we can do some model combat again, Spence, and have a good time pairing our models up against each other. But I see Yogi in the chat just saying he found my swing on YouTube. Yes, if you type in Byron Lindeque into YouTube, I submitted my swing for William Penn University on there. So it's kind of funny. You can see a lot less of me on YouTube there, wearing the same amount of clothes. I was a skinny lad, about like probably 60 pounds lighter than I am now when I was swinging back then. But that's neither here nor there. We really appreciate you all tuning in. Hit the mark, hit the like, hit the subscribe as you jump out of here. Check out the Model Maniac Patreon as well. I've got all sorts of stuff, best ball, DFS showdown stuff for you guys. I've got the betting channel, and I've just got the channel for everything you could wish for. If you just want the models, you can just get that as well. So split the packages up for you guys because you asked for it. So go make sure you support me there, please. I really appreciate that. Follow us on X. I'm floating between 14,000 and 13,999. There's a bunch of dicks out there that keep unfollowing me every time I get to 14,000. I'm just trying to celebrate. And then every time I go back, I'm back to 13. So at the Model Maniac, please get me over there so I can do a giveaway for a free month in the Model Maniac Patreon. Till then, we'll catch you guys next time.